conflict within a bourgeois family, but with a surrealist twist. You have people who are half human, half animals that sort of turn into people-like creatures, and a young woman, Theodora, who falls in love with Jeremy, who is half man and half wolf. In adapting the text by Carrington for the opera stage, Jelinek simplified it, carving out 13 images or tableaux. She also radically reduced the dialogue, turning it into what Stefan Drees has called a simulation of actual communication. This has the effect of heightening the surreal aspects of the text. Finally, the ending was also changed. In Carrington's version, Theodora goes insane at the end at the demands of her undead lover, Jeremy, who asks that she never grow older and stay beautiful forever. In the version by Neuwirth and Jelinek, Theodora stands by as a projection on the stage of her face, ages, and time-lapse. In other words, she chooses not to go along with Jeremy at the end. Jelinek and Neuwirth wanted to resist the trope of a woman succumbing to insanity as a way to escape her place in the patriarchal society. Let's listen to a clip now from the beginning of the 8th tableau scene, and I'll describe what we're gonna see first before you play it. We are going to hear the titular Festival of the Lamb, Balaam's Fest. That is a dreamlike Christmas celebration in the countryside where sheep are cavorting together, ice skating and dancing, while being presided over by a sheep patriarch, a ram referred to as Papa Schafbach, who appears on a large video game screen to address the sheep as a master of ceremonies for the night. I chose this excerpt not because it is necessarily typical of the opera as a whole, but because it showcases the way that Neuwirth translates Jelinek's stage directions into music. In this scene, Jelinek has indicated that some of the sheep on stage be controlled by other sheep using joysticks, like in a video game. And in this excerpt, you can hear video game-like sounds in the music combined with live instruments, including a theremin and human voices. We'll hear the ram talking to the other sheep, and we'll hear the sheep call for Mary, another sheep who dances. So let's do that first excerpt.
Seid ihr alle da?
Ja, Papa Schafbach! Ja, weil Weihnachten ist!
Und was, darf ich fragen, ist das?
Das Fest der Lämmer!
Stimmt genau! Die Zeit der Unschuld, Frieden auf Erden und so weiter und so weiter. Führt die Tänzerinnen herein.
Tolle Sache! Hoch die Hacken! Winkt die Keulen! Was für knusprige junge Damen!
Mary! Wo bleibt Mary?
Wir wollen Mary! Wir wollen Mary! Wir wollen Mary!
All right. So later in this scene that we just heard, Jeremy and Theodora invade the sheep celebration disguised as angels, and Jeremy, the half-wolf man, murders Mary, the dancer that we just heard, a crime for which he is ultimately killed, but which doesn't actually kill him because he's an undead creature. Right? He comes back at the end. So moving on to Lost Highway, this is an adaptation of the David Lynch film of the same name. Though not surrealist in the sense of Carrington's play, it's nevertheless of a piece with Balaam's Fest, insofar as it presents the audience with an enigma, the story of an avant-garde jazz musician who murders his wife and is sentenced to death, only to be mysteriously replaced in his death row jail cell by a young mechanic who quickly gets involved in an affair with a gangster's girlfriend. Jelinek adapted the screenplay by Lynch and Barry Gifford for the stage in English. Jelinek's version keeps most of the main events in the text, with Neuwirth contributing one minor change, making the musician Fred a trumpet player instead of a saxophone player, because Neuwirth herself started as a trumpet player. However, Jelinek's libretto does invent a scene to replace one key scene in Lynch's film that was considered too difficult to realize effectively on the stage. In Lynch's film, the gangster, Mr. Eddie, runs a man off the road, threatens him with a gun, and beats him because he has been tailgating. Mr. Eddie justifies this fit of rage with the assertion that he is merely enforcing the rules of the road, reminding the man of the number of car lengths required to stop at the rate of speed they had been traveling as he's beating him up and threatening him with a gun. Jelinek devised another scene where Mr. Eddie berates and beats a man for smoking in a non-smoking area. In each case, Jelinek and Lynch demonstrate by means of exaggeration the kind of libidinal investment involved in the enforcement of seemingly neutral rules and laws. Insofar as Jelinek's prose often does this sort of same thing of demasking a supposedly neutral everyday language, that is the way in which those in authority enjoy their position of authority, she and Lynch seem to be paired well. Let's listen to an excerpt from that scene now. We're going to hear Mr. Eddie threatening a man for smoking.
There's no smoking here. The guys who work here have family, wives, kids. Hey, your negligence, your lack of respect is endangering the lives of many people. But people like you don't see things that way. Don't keep to the rules. Don't see things that way. They just don't think. Don't think about others. They just don't think. Don't think about others. Just think about themselves. Just because they can't refrain from smoking, they endanger the lives of fine, upstanding dads. Because they can't refrain. Because they can't refrain. Don't think. We gotta deal with people like you. You're a public menace. You're selfish and irresponsible. People like you are dangerous. Are dangerous to the environment, to public welfare, to the whole country. Your kind doesn't have the right to live in civilized society. It doesn't have the right to live. Doesn't have the right to live. No smoking here. It's written clearly on the signs. Or can't you read? You see them, don't you? Good. Okay, you see them. That makes matters worse. You can see the signs, but you ignore them intentionally. You ignore them intentionally. You ignore them. You ignore them intentionally. Listen, for the very last time, won't you finally get it through your head that rules are there to be obeyed? To be obeyed! We gotta deal with people like you. We gotta get rid of people like you. Once and for all. If we ever have an opportunity to consider a moral renewal, people like you won't be around. Because we've dealt with you already. We're gonna settle with people like you once and for all. Let's get things in order right now! It's not possible to reach people like you any other way. They just don't listen. We'll make them listen to us. Characters like you gotta be eliminated. People like you. Unbelievable. It could have killed us all. We are gonna deal with you. I want you to put out that cigarette. Put it out. Over there, put out the cigarette right now. And now I want you to go over to the ashtray there and put it out in a proper way. Put it out in a proper way. Come on, let's go! And now I want you to say, oh.
Okay, and we could, if you were listening to what Mr. Eddy was saying there, you could see that Jelinek has inserted sort of her own critique of Mr. Eddy's language, making it almost a fascist sounding in a way that doesn't really affect, or it doesn't really happen in the Lynch film, saying that, you know, we need to rid society of people like you, and things like that. So to conclude, a note about Olga Neuwirth's music. This is a quote from Nicholas Till. She, that is Neuwirth, delights in instruments that dirty the purity of musical sound, Hawaiian guitar, Bavarian zither, and theremin, the latter often morphing into human voices, or into the human voices that they so uncannily resemble. Acoustic instruments employing smudgy multiphonics mimic the frequencies of electronic sound, a technologizing of the human that transgresses more familiar nature-culture distinctions. I think we heard that tendency in both operas and both excerpts that I played. But I think what makes these two works different and interesting in their own rights is that in Balaam's Fest, we're placed in a world whose surreal nature seems to be largely unproblematic or unquestioned for the characters, at least in the opera, and simply take it for granted. In Lost Highway, however, we have a much greater sense that things are strange, that something doesn't fit, and the characters in the opera seem to feel that way too. Yeah, and that concludes my remarks on Jelinek's operas.